It really has not been a very good couple of weeks, not only just for Rishi Sunak, but the Conservative Party in general as a whole. And currently at the moment, they are all gathered around the campfire singing Kumbaya, maybe with the occasional, Ginganguli thrown in just for good measure. However, the reality, of course, as the light twinkles around the campfire, slowly you can see all these, supposedly happy campers carving very, very pointed sticks and preparing what could be some sort of thrown ammunition, maybe even a slingshot, maybe for those more creatively inclined, for the eventual backstabbings, U-turns, and ultimately party civil war that is going to eventually erupt into a full-scale hilarious fight. And as I have said before, I am there for that. I cannot wait until that just goes, completely, oh boy, they're going to go after each other hard. Indeed. But before that, of course, you've got a current Tory party that is, of course, trying on the face of it to look at least normal, united in some way, shape, or form, because they know they've got the upcoming local elections very soon, and they need to at least put in the modicum of effort to try and appease the local councillors who continually have said for quite some time the reason we are not getting elected is because of you guys in Westminster and not putting a united front when it comes to, a local election. And this is what has really caused this, this new spirit of of you togetherness in the Tory party. However, once again, as we said, it ain't gonna last. You can see the very twinkle in their eyes as we said, in the lights around the campfire, and of course the sharpening of many a wooden pointed stick to to prepare for the eventual skirmish that is to come. But as we've said before, the Tories are a party who do not make decisions in a panic very well. And of course, making them panic and causing them to panic, especially as I repeat this, do get out and vote in your local elections. Get out and vote as many Tories as you can out. Get people out in droves. Like I say, sometimes in some like local constituencies, just getting to get an extra 100 people out is a massive shift in your local politics. So get out, vote for your in your local sort of councillors patch, get out and make sure that those local mayoral elections are losses to the Tories as well, especially, of course, in Teesside on Ben Houchen, because we've talked about how that could become a massive scandal once again if we do get someone who is Labour in there and they open the books to a proper full investigation to find out what's going on there. Oh boy, cannot wait. But what is going on? And what we're going to have a look at here is today the call, at least for Conservative Home, to say, please, just don't panic. Everything's all fine, guys. Everything's all fine. Just don't panic. Keep with Rishi. The plan is working, and don't worry about trying to switch to Penny Mordaunt, or else it could all go a bit Pete Tong. So today we're going to have a look at Conservatives' Home appeal for calmness, for cooler heads to prevail, to keep the course, keep calm and carry on. I suppose would sum up this entire thing. But we are going to go over this because I think it's well worth just honestly looking at to see just how bad things are that you having to have someone say this to try and calm the fears, of course, of the non-conservative parliamentary party. So before we do go into this, please remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can all buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, thank you very much who does support the channel. Like I say, even if you do, just click the like, the share button. And of course, if you are new to the channel, click the subscribe button as well. So let's crack on into this then. Right, so over we go to Conservative Home with their, like I say, appeal for calm. So, this title of this is, if Sunak is overthrown in a fit of panic and petulance, the Tory party will have sacrificed all claim to the nation's indulgence. So, let's get in, shall we? So, what do you think about Liz Truss's claim that she was undermined by the deep state? When that question was put yesterday afternoon to Rishi Sunak during his appearance before the liaison committee, he responded, reasonably enough, with it was a matter for her. To be honest, that was again a golden opportunity, a massive golden opportunity for Sunak to massively distance himself from Liz Truss. And if he wanted any chance of that, because Liz Truss is going to be a general election issue, her actions are going to be a general election issue. Her being active during the general election could be a massive, massive, ostrich round the neck of Rishi Sunak when he is trying to run for the, again in the general election. It is going to be. Oh boy, he had an opportunity and yet he did not take it. But this is what he said. So William Ragg, the Conservative, then proceeded to ask Sunak himself is a member of the deep state, said, "I probably would not tell you if I was," the Prime Minister replied with laughter, a perfect way of dealing with that question. But it is not evidently, of course, the deep state which is undermining Sunak himself. That task has now been undertaken by a shadowy group of conservative rebels for whom who do not care to identify themselves. They have been perfectly right to blame the Prime Minister of the day. Taking the blame has always been the PM's chief function. As I realised just some years ago when writing a volume of the brief lives of all of them from Sir Robert Walpole to the present day. They said the secret of the Prime Minister is that they are weak, and we give them an impossible job and then blame them when they fail to perform it. And oh boy, is Rishi Sunak weak? Like we've covered just how weak he is. I mean, once again, you had a perfect opportunity where Rishi Sunak could have just distanced himself massively so from Liz Truss. Maybe even take the opportunity to admonish her for some of the stuff he has said. Oh no, I'm not going to say anything. That's not for me to discuss. You could have taken a huge opportunity there if he was Sunak, but no. Once again, just showing you how weak he really is. So back to this. But having the right to blame Sunak is not as good as having a good reason to blame him. There are plenty of good reasons, plenty of good reasons to blame Sunak. Like I say, you can easily level that he is a very weak prime minister, very, very easily, just as I've said there. Perfect example. Many other examples you could go into as well. But his critics do fear the Conservative Party is now heading for a very heavy defeat at the next general election. That well may be true, though one can think of the recent election results which confound the predictions and the pundits and the pollsters. But and of course, the hope, of course, once again repeated, don't worry, the polls are wrong. The polls are wrong. One thing I've heard in particular at the moment is that Tory MPs and councillors are being told by CCHQ that when they are looking at the polls, when you see that big don't know number, that actually that 30% is actually going to vote Conservative because they're either going to vote with the current government or they're going to vote Conservative. This is what they are being briefed as. Like, this is the attempt to try and brief them. And that is serious. I can't reveal my source for that, but I can tell you that is what they are being briefed as for part of that. And honestly, it is hilarious to think that they are trying to rely on the quote don't know crowd as being their saviors for the next general election. But there you go. And not just the general election, the local election as well. So back to it. But let's take, for the sake of argument, and accept that the pollsters may very well be right and that Labour is on course for a landslide victory. It would be still wrong to demonstrate Sunak before the election. The rebels like to try and persuade themselves that by putting in a new leader, they would now enable the Conservative Party to perform that much better at the polls. Admittedly, they often avoid saying this in so many words, for as soon as it is said, the improbable nature of that assertion becomes very apparent. And I agree with the guy on this. I absolutely agree with what I said. Who could you put in place? We've said this before. Who could you put in place that can somehow turn this around? If you were going to put Penny Mordaunt in, because she she's the most recent one who's being suggested. What is Penny Mordaunt going to bring to this role or do that Sunak currently cannot do himself or cannot do? There's very little, very, very little. So, and of course, he goes, here is Sheila Jacobs in just yesterday's Daily Telegraph saying this, saying that the priority of the Tory party is now to avoid total liquidation. What is therefore needed is not a technocratic fixer, but someone who can now negotiate the party's entry into the political equivalent of administration. I love that. Let's take ourselves into the political equivalent of administration. And it continues. This is to say that an argument whereby the creditors, not least the Red Wallers, who lent their votes to this party, are kept at bay while it can be drastically restructure itself into a viable organization. So somehow, bear in mind, and this has been said all the way back to Boris Johnson, if the Tories are sort of to win this big majority again, then they've got to keep the red wall on side. They've got to prove that this red wall was just not a one-off fluke, that it wasn't, Boris Johnson lying. It wasn't the whole Brexit argument that was going on at the time. It wasn't, of course, the fanciful embedded promises of leveling up, etc., etc. What are you going to seriously offer these? Because so far, remember, you haven't really offered the red wall anything. Leveling up, as we've always said since the very beginning, just a complete fanciful failure. We've seen that. You've obviously got the whole episode of Rishi Sunak and that video saying how he took money from those seats to give it to more wealthier, more affluent seats. Again, if I was Labour, come general election time, I would be making sure that gets played in the red wall just on repeat, non-stop. And, of course, should be put as a question to those Conservative red wall MPs. How do you feel about your party leader saying that, taking money from you into that? And then, of course, they'll bring up, but red wall, but leveling up. And you can also then immediately come back and just say, well, no, leveling up has been a complete abstract, complete failure. Over 70% of the projects have not been done. Nothing long-term is being done. The infrastructure project, the Rail Network North, has been completely an abject failure. You got rid of HS2, which would have been the biggest rail investment and easily the biggest solve for a lot of the travel problems going up in the north. Again, it writes itself. It writes itself on many of this stuff. So back to it. So, of course, this requires someone who has the charisma on the campaign trail and isn't revered by the party's right. It requires someone who can actually grasp the reality that the Tory party can only survive as a pro-growth, low-migration movement, culturally orientated to the provinces rather than the metropolitan centre. It requires someone who can kill the reform threat by convincing a high-profile populist such as Nigel Farage or Boris Johnson to join their cabinet. That is a bizarre sort of prediction you want the Tory party to go in, but continue on that as you well may. So let's continue on with this. So we are asked to try and entertain the fantasy that the Tory party can be, quote, drastically restructure itself while remaining in office, drawing on the services of either Farage or Johnson. Either that, and somehow, again, maintaining itself in office with either a Farage or Johnson in charge. Well, Johnson has shown he has no aptitude for being a serious minister in any way, shape, or form. And if you give Farage a ministerial position, I don't think he would perform either. I think he would take the opportunity to say all kinds of wonderful, weird, and wacky stuff in Parliament, but no way. Because he would be expected to perform and he would not be able to perform. So, anyway, it continues. So, this drastic restructuring may indeed be required, but it cannot be carried out in the few months that it would remain after splitting the party by demonstrating Sunak and, of course, bringing in either Farage or Johnson, neither of who would be very acceptable to a very large proportion of the present parliamentary party, both of whom would almost certainly have the sense to refuse to lend their extraordinary abilities as campaigners to a party that was about to sink beneath the waves. Restructuring can only happen and only in opposition. It occurred to varying degrees of success after the defeats of 1945, 46, 47, and 97. The idea that sufficient time and energy and intellect could be in the coming months be devoted to restructuring the party while also governing the country and fighting internal civil wars is preposterous. I love it. He gets the idea at least, and that is the real truth. The more you cause them to panic, the more their innate sensibilities to just go full bore, just start fighting, just have internal party civil wars, and just rip themselves to shreds. And of course, if you can do that in the disastrous defeat of a local election result that you would see, with completely just wiping out, like they do not even win any of the regional mayors. In fact, they lose their regional mayoralships. That would be spectacular, spectacular to see, because oh boy, the panic-stricken Tory party would just completely tear itself apart and go into a massive sort of internal party civil war. Would be hilarious to watch, but again, that's what lies before us. So I'll repeat it again: get out and vote on May the 2nd. So, continues. Where is the national interest in this? How could the country actually benefit from a Conservative Party which turned on itself and gave itself over to fratricide? The months would then even shrink into weeks as demand for a general election now became irresistible. Sunak also reminded us yesterday during his appearance at the liaison committee he is a man of high ability who can be counted upon to do the prudent thing. He again again, that's laughable. He and of course Jeremy Hunt are restoring sound money. How? By doing nothing? Oh yeah. Yes. We're going to restore sound money by doing nothing. What a word phrase to just throw out there, because you can tell they are doing nothing. So you have to go, oh, they're restoring sound money. What does even that mean? Restoring sound money? Imagine just going to your bank and just saying, yes, I would like to restore my sound money, please. The puzzled looks you would get from the people in the bank would be interesting to see. So, anyway, so without which, of course, the government can achieve very little. This is not a glamorous thing to do, but it is unquestionably in the national interest. It is very childish to suppose that the deep-seated problems which exist in such fields as productivity, welfare, health, housing, and defence can be solved in a year or two. That is true, but what exactly is Sunak doing? What policy is he putting forward to solve those things? He's not putting forward anything to solve those problems. But continues, and let's finish this off. So there are, of course, no shortcuts to happiness. Margaret Thatcher required at least 4 years as leader of the opposition and over a decade in power to actually begin to get to grips with the very difficulties which had baffled her predecessors. But there are shortcuts to disaster. If they are decent, brave, intelligent, and very prudent, Sunak is overthrown in the next few months in just a fit of panic and petulance. The Conservative Party will have sacrificed any remaining claim to the nation's indulgence. And of course, the first comment is brave is not the adjective I would use for Sunak. And of course, just people constantly just saying, yeah, none of these things are going to work. But it just goes to show you the sheer attempt at least trying to calm the nerves of the non-parliamentary party in the Conservative Party. It is not going to succeed. They are probably going to see quite a very, very big disaster at the upcoming local elections. Like I say, the worse it is, the more they will fight, the more they will fracture, and that puts us in a far, far better picture going into a potential, or at least what we might maybe assume, might be a summer potential election. Again, rumors, who knows when there's going to be a full-on general election. The only person who can fortunately tell us is Rishi Sunak, but so far he's being very coy about it. But there you go. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.